I think under sort of what we viewed as a normal American society, this idea of like productive dialogue felt like a great fit. And now we're thinking like, wow, that maybe didn't work as well as we thought. And so I want to, my main message remains unchanged, but I have certainly been reflecting on it like we all have, and so I have a few things to add in, and also like open to to other people's input because we are in this together. So just a quick outline. A lot of this, I'm a geologist, but a lot of my work has been, in addition to writing, on more of the social science and actually graphic design end of things, because people are the complicated part in here, not the earth science. So here's sort of a rundown, and you look at most of this is actually social science. So, and this is going to be review, but like why? So why are we so divided on this? And a lot of it depends on how we learn. When people are in front of you in classrooms or in informal settings, they are learning in a structured way, and we can shape um, that whole experience, make it fun, make it positive, make it scientific, make it true. How about that? And so, there's no wonder why some of the younger people are not really our stubborn resistors of climate science. So, we learn about it in this nice formal way. But then after you're done with school, all bets are off. And learning is a cultural experience once you have left school, instead of being, a strictly classroom or structured experience. It becomes like, well, throw you to the wolves. And so we learn things then as a group, and it's filtered through these group impressions, whether that's your social values or the norms or the politics or whatever of your social group. And that's how we end up with the same science bringing us into totally different places. And now we're just seeing that on every possible topic and every possible issue. So at least it helps to a little bit understand like why. But I love this paper. This really changed my views on a lot of things. If you're in the mood to participate, this is meant to be a participatory thing. So this is a social psychology experiment. And so people were asked, like, why is the climate changing? They weren't given an option, like, is it? And so is it because of human activity or is it because of natural patterns? And so like basically the axes work like this, like the higher up you go on the vertical axis, like the more likely you get the answer right. And as you go along horizontal axis, it has to do with your science, ordinary science intelligence, like basic sort of eighth grade level science understanding. Okay, that's the setup. What do you think the shape of this plot is like?
Positive correlation.
Yeah, good. So like a line that's sort of sloping up like this, if you're watching video. Yeah. Yeah, you would really hope that. And yes, it is. Um, line is definitely a like positive correlation. Slope is going in the right direction, but it's not the strongest slope we've ever seen, given that this is our job. Okay, so here's the next phase of the test. And I've had these in my slides for a long time, and now it feels like now I'm pulling out but no. In order to understand every issue, especially this one, you need to sort it out by where are people coming from? What's their worldview? If learning is a social experience, then we need maybe two lines on here. What would the lines look like? A blue line and a red line. Katie makes the yeah. Yes. Crazy. They go in totally opposite directions. What's really discouraging slash enlightening about this plot is that a lot of us like to think, and we're not totally wrong, that the more you know, the better you are at science, the more likely you'll understand this issue. Crazily, that has the exact opposite effect depending on your political worldview. Note that this is liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans. It's not the middle people, who are many. But basically, so if you're a liberal Democrat, yeah, the more science the more likely you get that question correct. If you're a conservative Republican, the more science you know, the more likely you are to have the wrong answer, think the wrong answer. I don't know how you phrase that, but so discouraging but illuminating because it shows that we need to do more than simply teach science. Teaching science is amazing and so life fulfilling and great and can't get anywhere without it, but it's not enough. Okay, but still, we've done well. And this is like the hopeful part here. And I'm not like saying that we all should feel hopeful and rays of sunshine right now, because it's okay to be in a dark place. But we are in a good place. This is pretty robust, this trend. The election went terribly for our field, but these trends are a long time in building and they don't just disappear. Um, and so most people in the US are on board with this idea, are either alarmed and taking action or concerned that this is a problem. And the trends on this are really solid. Basically, with the people who are cautious in this yellow zone, who are not so sure, have gone upward on the graph, and the people at the bottom of the graph have stayed at the bottom of the graph. Um, climate deniers are not really changing, but they aren't really changing, and they're not growing. And this election didn't make these people grow necessarily. And so we have to remember that most people are on our sides, and to be able to lean into that confidently. That this transcends political boundaries somewhat, because 57% is a lot. And when we look at climate policy that we just got out of the last administration, actually it's still our current administration, they're really popular. And this is like very important. And we have no idea where this is going to go from here, but we're standing in a really good place that majority of people I showed you on the last slide has led us to these strong policies that turned out to be really popular. So we are standing in a good place here. And, I know it's going to be a terrible, rough ride, but we are starting in a good position. Undoing popular things is hard. Doing new bold things is also hard, and we got a lot of that done. But now taking away, it might be like the Affordable Care Act. It's harder to take away. Another good sign is that what people feel like they want to know about climate change has changed a lot, and this is really interesting data that shows the results of our work. So, and this is Yale and George Mason data when they asked, like, what do you most want to know about climate change? Like if you could ask an expert, one thing, what would you ask? And so this is in 2011. Like, how do you know it's humans? Not just nature. How do you know it's even happening? Is it going to be bad? And what causes it? So these are like really, really basic questions. And we have, taught these questions and you see them everywhere. But the cool thing is they re-asked that same thing now last year, and people have quite different questions. And that's really good because people are no longer wondering, is it even happening or is it bad or what causes it? Like we collectively have done a good job in teaching people such that they can move on to now better questions. Like, what are we going to do about it? And this is really big. This is like sort of dry data, but actually, when you think of people like us and that this has been our life's work, it's like, wow, we have moved the needle a lot. And it's really great to teach about solutions. They're fun, they're sexy, they're popular, they're new, they're shiny, right? And they're hopeful. And we don't have to get into such the like difficult stuff of like, is global warming bad? We're like, yeah, it is, sorry. But when we talk about the solutions, then it's a much easier conversation. Yes, nationally, it's going to be a disaster, but we have democratic states, democratic governors. We have utilities wanting to just save money and switching to cleaner energy. There's a lot of momentum that isn't instantly going to stop. So we're in a pretty good zone with this. Again, I'm not trying to like blow hopium around and make you feel better if you don't want to feel better. So, but there are some good things. There's some good stubborn momentum, that is hard to change. Um, if you get deeper into what Americans really want to know about climate change right now, it's still all about solutions, but the less likely the people who are not so on board, they still want to know that it's humans versus nature. So, these are how we can sort of satisfy the public, and that's going to include informal learning for sure, our students somewhat also, but also just everybody, people you sit next to on an airplane and everybody else. So still interested in the human cause, very interested in the solutions. So that's kind of what people want to know when they sit next to you on an airplane. You are the expert. Also, like, what's the motivation? This is a pretty new paper. What's motivating people? And this is like really comforting. This feels really good. Most people want to provide a better life for our children and grandchildren. I mean, you wouldn't guess that based on the election results, but those are great motivations. And again, those didn't just change in the last week and a half. It's great that people feel that way. Extreme weather is just more frequent, sadly, but it's also motivating people more. Preventing the destruction of most life on the planet. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Um, and then you can see that direction of other ideas. And so these are sort of framings that we can use. So these are the ones that are most sound and also that are moving the quickest. Um, so I like this because everything we do is about framing and understanding our audience and things like that. Like I use green jobs and economy a lot, so I'm surprised to see that like ranking low and going in the opposite direction. So maybe I reframe up here. But yeah, I want to acknowledge our work. We've done great work. We've made huge progress, but it definitely we've been dealt a tough blow here, and our jobs definitely got harder. So we need to think about what we've learned in the past and think about what we need to do to move forward. I love this. This is some of my early work as a freelance science journalist. I found this Reddit thread about former climate deniers. What made you change your mind? And I come back to this again and again and again because it's just really comforting that people do change their mind. Um, I'd like to call for guesses here. There are four definitive things that made people change their mind. Would you like to volunteer what you think they are?
Maybe just empirically experiencing changes in your own regular weather patterns over the.
Yes. Yep. That's on the list. Great. And there's three more.
That's what
Uh,
that's what I was gonna say too. People experiencing extreme weather events personally, which is
yes.
like most of Americans at this point.
Right. And nothing beats that, meets like your own life on the line. Yes. Any other guesses?
I wonder about
Yeah.
like maybe like developing trusted relationships with people that think differently from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is on the list, and so is Stacy's data. So believe it or not, the number one reason was actually science. And so it's people saying like, I wanted to deny it, and the evidence it just kept being overwhelming, you know. And so when all the scientists think this certain thing, then why, like, who am I to to think that they are all wrong? And so over time, the sort of accumulation, this cumulative effect of evidence, about half the people, and people had more than one response. You know, they're sort of telling their story. Stewardship was really interesting. Like everyone's like, why would I want a more polluted world? Like, what's in it for me to have more pollution? People with families, people just like seeing a video about coral reefs or flying over the ocean and looking down and like seeing like, oh man, this planet's actually pretty cool. And here's your weather events, weird weather and personal experiences with that. Whether not doing what it's supposed to be doing, said someone, or one person like bought snowshoes for their whole family and then it never snowed again. And they're like, damn it, it is real. And then about who you trust. The credibility factor came in as like, why would I be listening to oil companies telling me that their product is safe? Like that, and I was sort of happy to see that. Like eventually people do catch on to the credibility problem. But these were beautiful stories. If you want to feel a little bit better about people, you know, this article, it's linked in the bottom here, but I pulled out some quotes, and it really is pretty cool that people do change their mind, and we have done great work here. Um, I'm going to accelerate through this. So these are some of the quotes. So people are just saying basically they doubted it for a little while, but it scared them, so they thought that they, you know, that it wouldn't be a thing. I could just ignore it, and we don't want to feel like blame. And so these are like negative human emotions that we want to move away from. Makes sense. But then the messages that worked is that basically the overwhelming evidence, it makes too much sense to be fake. We look back and figure, why didn't we do anything when we had a chance? Like, why don't we take care of the planet? Why don't we like embrace new technology? And so these fall into like different categories of there's your science, your evidence, your ethics, your values, stewardship, the multiple benefits of solutions. And so you see, like, wait, these are just all ideas for framing, like things that have worked, that have helped people get on board. These are all like very, you know, kind of positive things. We want to step up to the plate. That spurred me on to want to understand more about how people change their mind. And so I did a series of deep dive interviews trying to figure out really what's going on, like what is happening for a person when they really flip. And I was looking for people who really made radical shifts, like 180 degree. And super cool work, topic of another webinar, but mostly it was linked to political ideology. So it was a package deal. I was hoping to find people who didn't change anything in their life, but just added climate change to their values. But in this case, it was people who changed their political ideology. And I interviewed people going in both directions, and that effect kind of went in both directions. But for most of the people, this middle bullet here, they started out as conservatives in their world outlook, and then suddenly the pieces didn't fit together. And it wasn't necessarily climate change that began this process, but suddenly something just fell off. Some of the sort of values they grew up around just didn't fit anymore. And it was very disorienting because they felt that their world was unraveling, or that they were putting together a puzzle and the pieces didn't fit anymore. I mean, the metaphors they used were really fascinating. And this process took years and was really uncomfortable. And so when we think about like winning hearts and minds, to know that in these really strong cases, it's a long process. We might not see any results quickly, and that it's uncomfortable. But this has everything to do with social science, right? And people described that there was a social belonging that either kept them where they are or pulled them to their new place. And these social connections were in both sides of the spectrum. So maybe this one guy like worked in the oil industry, and even though he was like an educated geologist and he knew better, he's like, yeah, but my buddies in the oil fields, they don't want to hear it, you know. So it's like you don't want to be the one sticking out. In one case, someone was like jumping ship away from a very religious community and realized that was not working out for her. And so she was like looking out towards environmental groups that could fill that same void that religion had. So a lot of it is about our people, who's around us. And there's this cool thing called social proof. And you can see social proof when you go to the airport and it's chaos. You're like, what do I do? And you look at everybody else and you're like, well, they're standing in this line and this person's doing this. And you're just queuing off of everybody in confusing and overwhelming situations. You don't necessarily read the signs or listen to the directions. You look at other people. And that's what social proof is. You're emulating other people to try to figure out, like, if they're doing that, then that must be the line I should stand in. And social proof is what's going on. That's what just happened in the election. You know, people were like, oh, maybe this is cool, you know, and these aren't people that are standing on the mountain of evidence that we do. And so you see social proof in terms of this. You see solar panels spreading through particular neighborhoods because like they see it and it's kind of like lovely contagious. And then you go through some neighborhoods, it's the same kind of demographics, but you see far fewer solar panels. So that's a great example of social proof, sort of people just being influenced by each other. In this case, we are the social proof. You know, it maybe feels less comfortable to talk about these topics right now because we realize we're in the minority, but we still need to be the social proof. We still need to be the people that unequivocally stand up and say, no, these are real issues. These solutions are beneficial. We are not going to back down. Because if we start to back down, then a lot of other people are going to follow us. So it's really important right now to own it, that we are the social proof and that we will help others continue to stand up and not feel like we're going to be sort of shamed into, you know, couching what we know to be true. So if you're comfortable talking about climate change, then others will do the same. I just gave a talk last week to broadcast meteorologists, and this was the slides that I made for them, and there was a lot of heads nodding here. So they can talk about like cold fronts and wind and rain, but they can also just call it what it is. They can say, hey, this is climate change. And then that gives social proof for other people to say, oh, I know what this is. You know, it's climate change is making it rain more in the winter. And so that meteorologist gave these skiers the social proof to have that same conversation. But as soon as you go the other way around and say, well, I don't know, let's equivocate, especially for all of us as leaders in our community, then everyone will follow you. So we do have an outsized effect, and it's an especially important time to lean in, and we'll take a little bit of a risk to be the ones demonstrating that social proof. Oh, I just noticed this person has little kitty mittens. That's very cute. Yeah, so I think we're up for the task. And actually these meteorologists are really up for that task as well. They, after I showed all the data that they're standing on these good solid footing, this was the day after the election. This is Montana, red state. They were like, the first person raised his hand. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm very excited. Thank you. So we can still make progress. Here's an example of an informal education nature center that couched so much that they actually missed where their audience was. And so they were like, it's sort of a rural area and kind of politically mixed. And they're like, we'll just sort of tap the brakes on this. And what happened was they totally missed the boat on their audience. And they used the Six Americas research to peg where their audience is, and then they realize, oh man, we're totally fine. We are in really good standing here, and that the audience is actually much more on board with this. And so they're able to redevelop their displays to match what they now knew to be true about the audience. And so, I think we might over worry sometimes about our audience. That said, we have our reasons for pursuing this topic, and we can't necessarily imprint those on other people, but we are very good about taking our topic and making it fit to what's important for other people. That's our sort of communication superpower. And so on the top here is the Montana Public Utilities Commission. Amazing diversity there. On the bottom is our county sunrise movement. So I talked to both these groups with the same topic, but obviously you really taper things differently depending on who you're talking to. I never want people to mistake the idea that I'm going to understand my audience as the same thing as I'm going to stand there in a shower of abuse or even a notion of abuse. And so I think it is a great idea to try to reach out to other audiences, but the minute it starts to feel unhealthy, then that's not for us anymore. I think it's easy to invest in the idea of our tolerance and things like that, but we should never stand in the way of abuse. So now these slides, I'm just moving I have some question marks. Sorry, I need to move there we go. I'm very much not a fan of arguing about things. I feel like when we argue, we sort of strengthen, we double down on our beliefs, and it doesn't move the needle. This is where I'm not sure. Like, I don't really love the idea of arguing either, but I think maybe standing up a little harder is a good idea. I don't know. So there's question marks here. These are sort of open questions. I'm all for like putting ourselves in the same boat. So we have this coal power plant and it's halfway closed. And the reason it's closed isn't because of environmentalists. It's because the other owners of the power plant, their customers, which are in other states, they just don't want it anymore. And so we could try to blame, environmentalists or whoever, but that's really not the thing. It's our customers don't want it. And so then like, how can Montana be part of like a modern energy economy? So now we're not, instead of fighting with each other, we're like identifying the actual problem and put ourselves on the same side. I've had great luck with this idea. And I still have conviction that it's the right approach, but it's hard and it's nuanced. Climate information also is hard to get to. And so I think this is something we can all help. Like literally it's inaccessible. Like the best information is so hidden. And then it's also like inaccessible because it's so hard. And this is the pivotal role that we play. The work we do is to be the translators here to make this easier. Something I've been thinking about this week is like, can we make it even easier still? And so referring back to the early slides, it's this cultural experience. Like, so how can we make it a cultural experience also? Fox News is free. Fox News isn't going to make you feel like you're dumb because you don't understand Milankovitch cycles. But our stuff isn't always free, and people do feel dumb if they don't understand or even care about Milankovitch cycles. So can we meet people here? Is there a way to make climate information like, I don't know, more sticky, more fun, like super easy, and like make the villain the actual villain, And so these are open questions. These are, we're all kind of asking a lot of questions. I write a lot about EVs and how crazy efficient they are. But you could turn that into a meme that, how come Exxon never told me that I'm wasting my gas money? And so it's the same information, but it's framed in a very cultural way. It's not even trying to be scientific. This is sort of a cultural type of communication. The solutions are pretty fun. And so can we make them even more fun by normalizing the idea, the excitement of moving towards lower polluting and more modern and cool looking solutions? And can we put the blame where it is? Like one of the wins of this dialogue that we live in is that it's pitting us against each other, which is so masterful for the people that are deliberately doing this. But like we should stand together and put the blame where it belongs, which is some of these oligarchs and CEOs and fossil fuel companies that they're having a great time dividing us. But what if we stood up against them? And so maybe that's a type of communication that helps move the needle. And, you know, these are all based on true things, but they're like really tuned to in a more cultural way. I'm not at all saying these are the answer, but it is interesting if you think of like we make our stuff easy and appealing, but like what if we go another level down that path? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about. Okay, so just wrapping up. We know this is hard. We know that there's lots of things that work. They have worked. They have gotten us to great places. They will continue to work. Maybe we need to make it even easier or tinker with new approaches. But you know, we've done great work. I know we will continue to do so, even as we continue to fine tune it. And above all, like one of the things that's been hardest for me right now, and perhaps for you too, is people sort of expecting you to feel hopeful and to like fight the good fight and all that. And like, I'm not feeling that. And if you're not feeling that, that's great. Take care of yourself first. No one's going to rise up and like put the boxing gloves back on and go out there this week. Like we've got each other. We've done excellent work. We will continue to do it. It might be time to take a breath first and to regroup. So that is not my normal talk, but I think I didn't want to just use the same old slides and talk past the very difficult time that we're in right now. And the last thing I wanted to say is my bottom bullet here: Blue Sky is turning out to be a wonderful environment. If you would like to leave Twitter, or perhaps you already have, I would highly recommend it. Blue Sky under our feet right now in these last couple of days is just absolutely taking off. There's all these little groups called starter packs with climate and energy and educators and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to go somewhere to try to catch your breath and figure out what's next, I would encourage Blue Sky. So that is what I've got to say right now. Thank you. And I'm really open to what you think about all of this too.